So, welcome to the podcast, Lisa. I'm excited because we've been in each other's space for, I don't know, quite a few years now. And
hmm
yeah, this is going to be a juicy conversation.
Yeah, it's going to be great. I was thinking back to that as well, and it's back into the murky pre-pandemic days. It was like 2019. So that time flow is so different. Like it seems like it was a million years ago. It really wasn't, but because of the COVID time warp, here we are.
Oh, I haven't heard that, but it kind of was a time warp. I'm like, I don't even know what's going on anymore.
Yeah, no, time and space don't make sense at all anymore, and it is a direct result of the COVID time warp. Yeah.
Oh, well, and that leads into my first question because I asked you before we interviewed, like, what is the one question that you wish people had asked you on a podcast or an interview? And you asked, who am I now?
hmm Yeah, it's who am I now is such a powerful question, and it is the central theme of my work. So, the way that question came to be is that I had come to a point in my life where my children are now 18 and 16, and my whole life had been leading up to having a young family and a career. And as I got through that, suddenly I was on the other side of it, and my children were older. And I suddenly found myself in this space that I'd never even considered. Like every decision I had made had been leading up to this one image that is presented to us essentially in our culture, in our society, of like, this is what we strive for. And then what happens after that? Who knows? Right? There's very little story or narrative around what happens when you get to the other side of the picture you painted in your head of what your life would be. And so that leads to that question, well, who am I now? If all of my life I had been a daughter, I had been a friend, I had been a student, I had been a teacher, I had been a mother, I had been a wife, I'd been all of these roles, but those roles were not who I actually was. So when those roles started to be pulled away and shifted in ways that meant I had more time and I wasn't constantly in I like to call it the patriarchal busy box. When I was no longer in that patriarchal busy box, I looked in the mirror one day and thought, I don't think I know who's looking back at me. And it was not a conversation that was happening around me. It wasn't a conversation that I saw play out in stories, in books, in movies. And so I felt completely lost. And so that became, who am I now? Became a question that led to a complete transformation in my own life.
Ooh,
hmm
ooh. Yeah, that is one of the most powerful questions. I had one of those moments a few years ago and I was sitting on a floor and we are supposed to write down who am I? And I was like, I can't even put my name on the page.
hmm Yeah. Yeah. Because we are taught to look externally, right? So we're taught to look at everything outside of us to give us our identity, right? So for a long time, my identity was an educator and a mother. That's who I was. But that is not who I am. Those were roles I played. They were meaningful and they were important, but they were still roles. And in the transformational coaching work that I do, that is the space that I really dig into. So my business is called Lean In, Finding Your Way Home, because we've walked ourselves down the path away from our own home, from our own selves, in a process of continual self-abandonment to meet the needs and expectations of other people. And so now at this phase, it's the first time that I've had the opportunity, and the clients that I work with are experiencing the same thing, It's the first time you've had the opportunity to stop and take a breath and not have to meet someone else's expectations.
Oh, that is a scary place to be.
It is both things, right? Like I talk about duality in my work a lot because emotions are almost never one thing, right? So having space to actually figure out who you are absolutely can be terrifying, because more often than not, when I ask that question, the answer is I don't know, and I don't know if I ever did know. And that is a powerful realization that shakes us to our core. And that seems like big and scary work to realize I don't know if I ever knew who I was. That's that's a lot of unwinding, right? Of deep societal programming. So for sure, there is fear and there's the unknown in that. It can feel like jumping off a cliff. At the same time, it is exciting and it is liberating. In so many ways, this phase is a time of liberation because you're finally able to give to yourself in a way that you have probably never done before.
Ooh. I'm like, oh, there's so many questions that pop up into my head. But one of them that keeps, coming to the forefront is you talk about the roles that we play. And
Mm-hmm.
one of the things that comes up for me is because once you take out the roles and we come home to self, what does that mean? Like, I have a role to myself too, to take care of my body. I have a role to, do the different things. So, how
Mm-hmm.
do we remove the come home to ourself from the quote unquote titles, roles, whatever
Mm-hmm.
people are calling it? How do
Mm-hmm.
we unwind that to find ourselves?
Yeah, it's a big question. So one of the first things that I do is okay, is there a time in your life that you remember where you felt completely embodied in yourself, in who you were, and you just had this moment of like, yeah, this is who I am? And what did that feel like? What emotions come up for you when you think about that time?
Ooh, are you reversing that and making me answer?
Oh yeah. Sorry.
I was, I was
Podcaster
like,
to podcaster. I just made it switch.
wait a minute. I don't get it reversed. Yeah, there is. And I immediately, when you said that, I was like, don't think about that. We've got to be an active listener. But it was when I was getting my pilot's license, I was one of the only females in there. I was
Mm-hmm.
afraid of flying. And I was like, I took the bull by the horns. It took me like 5 times longer than everyone else. But when I
Mm-hmm.
walked away with that license, that was the moment I felt because I was in control. I was doing something I loved. It was fun. I didn't need any other outside expectation. It was like, this is for me. And
Mm-hmm.
everybody out there didn't matter that was telling me I couldn't.
Yeah. So there you go. Right? There's persistence, there's passion, creativity, fun, knowing deeply like this, oh yeah, this is who I am. And that is a really key component, is just being able to go back to a time. Like for me, I worked at a summer camp. There's a whole lore in my family because it's where I met my husband. My kids work there now. Like it's a whole thing. And I started going there when I was 8 years old, and working there as a counselor as a young kid, that was my goal. And so my second summer when I was working there, I was 17 years old, and it was staff training. So kids weren't there. It was just like my friends, my people. And I laid down on the grass in the middle of the fields, and no one was around me. And I felt the earth beneath my body. I felt the sun on my face, and I felt calm, peaceful, completely in my body. And as humans in general, women specifically, and I can only speak from my own lived experience as a woman, being in our bodies is really challenging. right? There's so many reasons why we want to abandon the body. We want to abandon the vessel because it's painful. Our bodies hold the score of all of the experiences that we have had. Our bodies always tell us the truth. And so that's why we want to not be in them. Because if I'm in my body, it's telling me the truth. So in that moment, when I was 17 years old and I was totally embodied, my body was telling me the truth of who I was, right? I'm a leader. I am fun. I am strong. I am independent. I am loving, right? It is those messages that come from our body that are the truth of who we are. And then we pour that truth into the roles that we play, right? Like it's not a they're not separated by a wall. Like my role as a mother is deeply interwoven in who I actually am because my whole life I wanted to be a mother. But I am my best mothering self when my kids know who I am. So that was a really big moment for me. I had taken a leave last year, a 6-week leave from my teaching role. I had been teaching grade 6 online, and it got to a point where I was crying every single day going into work because the energy expenditure to create spaces where young humans actually want to come and be online it's an inhuman feat. And so I took that time, and about 3 weeks into it, my kids looked at me and they said, "Oh, there you are." And it just hit me like that went straight to my heart, right? We think that we're putting on, we think we're putting on these faces that our kids won't notice or they won't realize, but they absolutely do. And when they saw the truth of who I was, it changed their perspective around what it means to actually live a life. And then I'd had the same conversation with my husband in the fall because leaving a career like education is not an easy thing to do because there's, a pension, there's benefits, there's a stable income every week. And so taking this leap was pretty big and very scary. But the same thing happened. He looked at me in the fall and he said, "There is no way you can go back to teaching. I finally have you back." And those are the moments where you realize there are things that are more important. And when you set yourself free, you start to set everybody else around you free as well, because then they see, oh, it's important to be my actual self.
Ooh. I'm like, there's this whole like warmness and like heavy. It's like warm and heavy all at the same time in my chest
Mm-hmm.
because wow, like I am teary eyed. Like having
Mm-hmm.
someone look at you and say that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that is so eye opening. And that has to be why you've gotten into like, this is what you're supporting people with is these
Mm-hmm.
transitions back into self because, oh, like even just the vision of having somebody say that to me
Mm-hmm.
would,
Yeah.
I'm just like, I'm like, my brain is like, I can't even comprehend.
Yeah. It's really powerful, right? Because we think, and again, programming, that giving to ourselves is selfish, right? That's the narrative. The narrative is that, especially when you are in a partnership or in a career, that your goal is really supposed to be to serve everybody who is around you. That's what you're supposed to do. And so when you turn inward and you start giving to yourself, that we are told from a really young age that that is a selfish thing to do, right? Like you can't invest in yourself. You need to be investing in everybody around you. But the truth is that when we invest in ourselves and we are here and present in our bodies and we know ourselves and we deeply know and understand our worth, that ripples out. And that is when I am actually able to give to other people in a genuine way. And then I also don't resent the giving that I have to do, right? Because then it's no longer, I don't have to say the word have to. This is what I want to do. And it's coming from a place of genuine love and care, and it's reciprocal.
Ooh. I'm like, there's so much here, and there's so many directions we can take this conversation, because
Mm-hmm.
this coming back to self, I want to know, like, because you mentioned the mask, the things we think we're
Mm-hmm.
showing up and fooling the people around us. What did that look like for you as the masked and unmasked? However weird that sounds so weird in this COVID flash forward time, but masked and unmasked
No, that's a really
version of
good
you.
question. It's a really, really good question. And so the answer is, and some of it will be like, some of this is my own perception, but for most of my lifetime, I have been seen as super reliable, like always the person that would show up when somebody needed me, calm, steady. Like the number of people in my life who have said to me, like, oh, if you're there, then I know everything's going to be fine. I don't have to worry about anything. Right. So that was the role that I played, was always being the person who was steady, predictable, reliable, I'm going to say. And I mean, not that that isn't true about me, it is. However, also wearing that mask of always having to present that way was really, really challenging. Another way I can put it is, one of my students last year said to me, they're like, Lisa, how are you happy every single day? How are you so happy every day? And I was honest in the moment and I said, I'm not happy every day, but I want you to always feel comfortable when you come into the space. And I don't want you to ever feel like you are the cause of whatever my stress is. So I always look to you like I'm happy, because that's the space I'm trying to make here. And when you are playing that role, it is incredibly energy expensive. And then that's what led to crying in my car every single day, because I was so tired and I could never be my fulsome self. I could only ever present this one aspect. So this year, when I said I was leaving teaching, I was finally able to take the mask off and say, look, this is the whole of who I am. I am not just this person who is predictable and reliable. I also am deeply spirit connected to source and spiritual, which was something I had never showed anyone in my very academic world. And and for me to make that kind of shift looked, from the outside, I would imagine, probably like a midlife crisis in many ways, which it isn't. It's actually the truth of who I have always been. And it's scary to do that, because you know that not everyone is going to come with you in the new version of who you are. And some of the unwinding of that is just being able to accept it and say, those who are going to come with me are the ones who are meant to be with me anyway. And I am worth spending the time to know who I really am. I I don't have to hide myself. I no longer have to hide myself. I can be whole and I can be free.
Ooh, I can be free.
Mm-hmm.
That right there is like, it's so powerful. I'm like, do I even know what it's like to be free?
We don't, right? In so many ways, we don't. I finally had a day last week where I went, fuck, this is it. Like I'm finally living the life. I had like in the morning, I did my workout, I did my meditation. I was able to take my grandmother to the fracture clinic, do what she needed. Then I was able to go and sit in the sun with a friend and have coffee and do some work that I loved and that felt meaningful in and around those things. And then, sit on the deck with my husband and have a glass of wine at the end of the day. And I was like, this is what it means to live, to be able to be present for myself first, and then for the people who need me, and then be able to give back again to myself at the end of the day. Like my whole life as an educator, on the first day of school this year, 2022, it was the first time in 40 years I had not been in a school building.
Wow.
I did the same thing every day in different ways, but it was the same thing for 40 years. I got up, I worked, I came home, I went to bed. And it was that bubbling sense at the end of what turned out to be the end of my teaching career of this is not living. I don't know that I have ever actually lived. And now I know what it feels like to be free and to live.
Oh, I'm like, okay, I'm in for it. I'm in. How do we get me there? Because I want to join. I want to join you. I want to be free.
Yeah.
And I'm really excited that this is what you're bringing and what you're supporting people into. Because like my entire body is like confused right now. I'm going to be completely honest. It's like
Oh yeah.
expand, contract, expand. Oh,
Yes.
scary, expand. And I think that I know that I'm not the only one
Oh
because
yeah. No.
we think we think we've created that freedom because we never
Mm-hmm.
allow ourselves, like you said, that moment to lay in the grass.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah. How do we know what freedom is when we have never really given ourselves the time to figure it out? And in my podcast, Transforming 45, those are the conversations that I get to have with people every week. So it is a space, it's sometimes just me, but for the most part, I'm interviewing other women where they are telling their stories of transformation. And every story is beautiful and unique. And at the same time, there is a thread of continuity, right? Where eventually that the narrative that's been playing, that's been run, the program that's been running in us for so long hits that point of exhaustion. And it's either like, I'm either not going to make it or I have to change. And like that's literally when it came down to for me. Like I was either going to die or I needed to do something else. And that moment seems to crystallize for almost all of the women I've talked to. They've had that moment of crystallization, of realization of I can't keep being this way. And then it's the turn inward of, well, if I can't keep being this way, then what do I need to do to evolve so that I can go forward in a way that is joyful, that is thriving.
And for you, that was changing in a completely different, I mean, you're still technically educating.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I still see myself, I'm still an educator, just in a really different way. And the thing I always say about education is this: I loved kids. Kids were the best. And I hate everything about the education system. Like
Oh,
this system was built for the Industrial Revolution. It was built for a time that no longer exists. And that's why we see so much tension in that system, because the kids who are in it know that it's not relevant for them. And you can see them pushing against that system that's telling them that they need to be the same, that there's only one path, that there's only one way, because that's what the system sets up. they're beautiful humans. This is not disparaging to the people who are doing the work. I'm so grateful to the incredible humans who are still there, who are still showing up for kids every day. But that system structure is so harmful on every level. And so now I get to be free of that. And I just get to do this work with women, however they show up as women, and watching them come back to themselves is the most incredible thing I've ever gotten to witness.
Oh, I'm like, I mean, it's great. Like, if you think about it, you were teaching what was you know, like you've just said, is broken. I believe it's broken. I don't have kids, but I see what's coming out. I thought it was broken when I
Yeah,
was in school and revolted all the time. And that was
absolutely.
plenty of years ago. That was,
Yep.
and I love that you're now helping correct the problem.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for that. I'm not sure I can see that in myself yet, but thank you for saying that. It is when I got to that realization of like, shit, I'm in a time of my life I've never even considered. And women at this phase are so powerful, but are voiceless and mostly unseen, right? There's so much power in the wisdom, in the life experience, in the empathy, in the deep understanding of relationships that comes with, 45, almost 46 now years of experience. And yet the microphone is not given to women at this phase. And part of my motivation for this work is to give the microphone to women at this phase, because I believe we can make huge change when we have the microphone. So yeah, it is my actually, when I started doing this work and I left my career, I need to start reframing that as well. I didn't leave my career. I ended one chapter and I started another. And I kept asking myself this question, am I a bad feminist? Because I'm doing something for me, right? It felt, because of all the programming I had, it felt indulgent. It felt like so many things. And I was carrying around all of this guilt of like, well, now I'm not the woman who does it all. And then I realized, oh no, I am doing the most feminist thing I can possibly do. I am showing what it is to stand in your own power, to call it back, to stand in that power and to use it to make a difference, to make a change.
Like mic drop. I don't even know where to go from there. I mean, yeah, we have, and again, this is why I think you're like correcting it, even though
Mm,
it's in our 40s. I'll be 40 this year.
mhm.
I, I see,
Congratulations.
I know, I'm so
40,
excited.
40's the best.
I'm like, I'm ready. I'm ready for
Yeah.
it. Bring the 40s on. Get rid of all
Mhm.
the 30s and the 20s, whatever.
Yeah.
But I think that if we like you're starting correcting it from this. So
Mhm.
as, you know, most of my friends already have kids, but this can be trickled down.
Mhm.
This can be trickled down to them. And then we start getting the younger people to, maybe not
Absolutely.
revolt would be a good word, but like if we could
Mhm.
change the system
Mhm.
and start having, I don't want to call myself an adult, but having us adults help this new generation coming up, because first
Yeah.
off, it's so different. It's so different than when we grew up.
Oh, completely. Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
think that we can have a voice more now because of things like podcasting, because of things
Mhm.
like social media. I think podcasting is better, but that's my love
Yeah.
because we
I
truly do
hear
have
you.
a microphone. We truly can
Yes.
make a legacy.
Yeah. No, I absolutely agree with you. And I think that there is an opportunity for really beautiful intergenerational learning. And that, like, I'm glad you brought up like younger women as well, because I'd love to start building that foundation in women when they're new into motherhood, because that's when you lose yourself, right? You are completely consumed by keeping this thing alive, right? And then you get through that part and you just get consumed by so many other things. But if women who are at this phase, if there's opportunity to talk across those generational lines and say, don't lose yourself. Don't give yourself over completely to everybody around you, because trust me, that's actually serves no one. I know that's the story that we've written around what motherhood should be, that you just completely give over yourself and you make these humans the center of your universe. But we didn't have babies to have a baby, right? You have a baby to create a human. And if we constantly stand in the way and solve all the problems and give ourselves over and just make them the center of everything, they don't get to learn how to be their own human. And they don't get to see you being your own human. And that's a disservice to to everybody in that relationship.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that goes back to your original, the original question, who am I now? Is
Mm-hmm.
that even though I'm in this different version, like you said, for the new mom, you're still
Yeah.
you.
You're
Like,
still you. Yeah. And kids have so much to teach us as well, right? Like, I know there's so many stereotypes about every generation. And I remember having this conversation last year, actually, about millennials in the workforce, and Gen Zs are starting to enter now as well, right? And the conversation went something like this. Well, they say no. They say no to things, like they won't stay and coach, or they don't stay for hours after school, or they prioritize their yoga class. And it was like, good. That is something we need to learn from another generation, because what has abandoning ourselves gotten us? Nothing. Abandoning ourselves over and over and over and over again has gotten us absolutely nothing. Because I can tell you from experience, you feel like this work that you're abandoning yourself from it for is essential and it's the only thing. And if you're not there to do it, who's going to do it? There's someone else. The minute you walk away, that career is not waiting for you. That system didn't care about you then. It doesn't care about you when you leave, because there's someone else to take your place. I can guarantee you that. That doesn't mean that you aren't important and you aren't magic. It just means the system will perpetuate itself. So learning from another generation to set boundaries and say, no, I'm not going to do that, because then I'm going to burn out, or I'm not going to be able to be with my family if I do that. I'm not going to be able to have fun with my friends. I'm not going to be able to have joy and fun in my life because I've abandoned myself over and over and over again. That's just one small example of where it's so important to learn from each other.
ooh, all right. I just had a learning moment. Does that count?
Yeah. What was it?
I'm like, to say no, the boundaries, and the
Mhm.
conversation around millennials, because I'm like borderline cusp on the millennial, and I'm always like, I'm not a millennial, and it
Mhm.
is that. It's the our gener. I think we're probably close. I'm like borderline,
Yeah.
but we're in the same generation where it's like work hard. If you're not
Yeah.
working hard, you're not worthy. Or if you're not barefoot and
Mhm.
pregnant, you're not
Yeah.
worthy. I'm like, so
Mhm.
I chose the work hard always because we chose not to have kids.
Yeah.
And the thing that frustrates, and I've heard the conversation too, and it didn't just dawn on me till then, it makes me irritated and I'm annoyed and I complain about it because I want
Mhm.
it.
Exactly. Yeah. Because when they put that mirror up and you realize, I could have been saying no all of this time. No one told me I could say no. And I went through a pretty significant grieving period in the fall for exactly that reason. because I realized everything I had missed in giving myself over completely to something entirely external. I had missed all kinds of time as a mom. I'd never been able to go to my kids' sport. I'd never been able to go to their games. That was a revolutionary moment for me in the fall where I actually got to go and watch my kid play volleyball. I was like, this is something I've never been able to experience before. And to watch them interact with their friends and to see that part of who they are, I missed all of that. I missed 1,000 opportunities to actually listen to myself. Or when I did start to hear that voice, I just immediately shut it down because I had too many other things to do. And there is grief in that realization. And it's okay. It's also okay. It's okay to feel that grief and to know that you did the best you could at that point in time. And now you know how to live in a better way.
Oh, I'm like, okay, thank you. There's just I'm going through all the phases of grief right now.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Like that's I keep thinking of 40. Like it's time to restart. It's time to know who I am and it's time to do this. And there is that grief moment. I'm like, I have missed out so much in the last 7 years of hustling to try to make this business work. I spent
Yep.
12 years in finance. I hate finance. I hate being in a cubicle. And
Mm-hmm.
I gave up so much having to work late, having to come in my business right now as an entrepreneur. I give up so much. And for
Mm-hmm.
why?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's an important question to ask yourself, right? Like, why am I giving up what I'm giving up? Is it worth it? Is it what I really want? That is another question that I use a lot in my practice. And I work my way up to it because it's not a question we allow ourselves to ask, but it's the question of what do you want? And what do you want without the caveat of what everybody else wants around you first? Like letting go of that external noise and really locating yourself internally and ask, what do I want? And what can I do to make that happen?
Those are like the three hardest questions, right? What do I
Mm.
want? What can I do to make it happen? And who am I? I'm like, man, and
Yeah.
I'm like, listeners, I know you're like, I gotta pause. I've got so much to think about because the same, I'm feeling the same way. I'm with you guys. I promise, guys and gals. Like, I am in the same boat. I'm like, whoa,
Yeah.
my brain, my body, my everything is just like in all the feels. This is like so powerful. And this is why I'm incredibly excited that you have your podcast. I'm incredibly excited about like you taking this business and helping people understand that. Because I mean, if we can do this in a conversation, I can
Mm-hmm.
only imagine what it's like to like come into your space, you
Yeah.
know?
Thank you. Yeah. It's really exciting. It is deeply meaningful. And I am grateful that I get to do this work. And, one of the things people will ask me is like, well, how does this work? Right. I'm feeling this way. I don't know how to get out of it. How does this work? And often the response that people have gotten before or even it's the dominant narrative of like what to do, right? Well, you know, take a class, get to know the things that you like to do, whatever those self-care things are, right? So I've always had this like push-pull relationship with that self-care conversation because yes, it is important. I'm not saying it's not important. It is. But those things are like the medication, right? They mask or they deal with symptoms, but they don't get to what's actually underneath, right? So you can pickleball your heart out, but if you have not gotten to why you haven't been feeling joy, why you can't answer the question of who I am and what do I want. No amount of pickleball, bubble baths, glasses of wine, or self-help books will do the trick, because those are all strategies. It's like roles, right? The roles that I play, those are strategies that I use. But we have to get to what's real inside first before you'll start feeling true joy in those things.
Ooh, and that's what life is all about, is that joy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Living with purpose and passion and authenticity. That's what it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be fun.
Right. And I think that has been said so many times. It's kind of got a stigma around it. But everything that you desire is on the other side of fun. The more fun you're having,
Mm,
the more energy truly attracts energy.
yeah.
And, because this is an entrepreneurship podcast, this is going to play out in everything, your life, your
Mm,
relationships, your business, your money. Like when you allow yourself, I know I'm listening to myself right now, when you allow yourself to have fun and do those things, that's when you become magnetic.
mm-hmm. Yeah. Because that's when there is flow, right? Like flow theory is all about that, where you lose sense of time and place because you are just so engrossed meaningfully in what it is that you are doing. And that's the ultimate state, right? Is being in flow. And then energetically, everything starts to literally flow through you.
Oh, yes, yes, yes. And sign me up. Ready for
Let's
the
do it.
flow and the freedom. Let's get all the F's in there.
Yeah. Yeah, some interesting apps could be in there too.
Uh-huh. I've got them all in my head right now.
That's
You're
great.
welcome to say them here, but there are a lot of F's in there that we can add that this is such a beautiful conversation because I feel like this last 3 crazy years has
Mhm.
really allowed this to come up, which I think is causing a lot of turmoil. So, your work, your podcast, what you're doing, and creating the space where it's like, okay, it's going to get messy.
Yes. Yeah. And that is also, so two things in my podcast, in every single conversation, I don't think there has been one yet where someone hasn't said, well, during COVID, I realized. It absolutely is painful and challenging as it was. It was a transformational time. And we're only now beginning to see the effects of it. Like you can really only experience the effects of it when you're beginning to be on the other side. And this is going to be a time where people are making shifts and changes because they had that realization. And now I forget what the other thing was. Well, it'll come back if it was meant to.
But I don't know, like there's just, oh,
Mm-hmm.
yes, making those changes. It's really allowed for the shifts. And I think it was because we were forced to pause.
Yes. Yeah, there was forced time to stop. And that actually, that's another way I describe my work is, so many people think of coaching as and coaches as like go, right? Go, 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 action. I am a stopping coach. I teach you to stop and to be still and to sit and to listen. And so it's challenging work, right? We don't want to stop because that's when the truth comes through. And it's like the easiest and the most challenging thing you can possibly do.
It's normally the things that work the best or the
Mm,
easiest and
yeah.
hardest.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. It is all of the things.
So tell us a little bit more about your podcast and, where we can find you and how we can get into your delicious space. I'm going to call it because I'm like, oh yeah, I got all the feels.
That's good. Yeah, so my podcast is called Transforming 45. You can currently find it on my website, on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, on YouTube. I'm starting to upload episodes there as well. Yeah, yeah, it's fun. You can, so my website is Lisa at weaninfindhome.com. I have a Facebook group under Lisa Boat Transformational Coaching. I am on Instagram. I'm in all of the spaces.
You're like, I will make an impact. So find me
Uh,
wherever you're at. I'm like, come on over.
I'm doing my utmost best. I started a little bit on TikTok. There'll be like a few videos where I'm going to just start dropping some segments from my podcast there. Yeah, just trying to meet people where they're at, because I just so passionately believe that this work is critical. And seeing, like I said, it's the greatest joy in seeing someone. Actually, a client said to me the other day, this is the greatest gift I have ever given myself. And that went straight to my heart, because she realized that she had made a choice. She invested in herself. She was doing the work. And that is my ultimate goal. It's not about me. I'm there to ask questions and to help you build internal locus of control, so that you know that your worth is within you and you don't need external validation. So my goal is always to be working myself out of a job, because I want you to be able to fly and do your life with grace and joy. And so when she said that to me, it just was the greatest gift to me, because I could see how her healing was setting her free.
Oh, that is the best feeling as a coach, is like when you see that when they don't need you anymore. However
Yeah,
much it's like, it's not about, at that point, you're like, fly, be
yeah,
free.
yes, because that's the whole point, is to be free, in your fullness.
Oh, oh, I love this. So I have to know, if someone were going to walk away with that one thing that they took with them in this moment, maybe it's
Mhm.
this week, maybe it's forever. What is that one thing you want them to take with them?
Look within. You already know, right? Whenever something resonates with you, whenever you hear something, when you have that deep emotional reaction, it's because you already knew, and you just needed someone to affirm it for you. So listen, go internal and listen to what your body, your heart, your mind, your soul is saying to you. Because the truth is, you already know.